Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. And we'll just get started. Let me know if you can hear this, if you can't hear this.
No sound.
Can't hear it, Aiden.
I will try again.
Empowering the people who power our world. Since 1977, the Association of Energy Engineers has been a global energy community towards a clean and sustainable future.
Founded by Al Tuman, AEE emerged during a time when the world grappled with the oil crisis. Today, we're a global network of over 17,000 members and 32,000 certified professionals in over 105 countries, dedicated to implementing projects that improve energy efficiency, address climate change, and drive economic growth. AEE is a nonprofit organization dedicated to serving our members and other industry professionals by providing them with a framework where they can network, grow, and helping them stay abreast of the latest industry trends and empowering them to maintain a competitive edge through training and professional certifications. AEE developed the energy management profession. Our Certified Energy Manager certification is available in 10 languages and now has over 18,000 CEMs throughout the world. We also have certifications in energy auditing, building commissioning, sustainable development, renewable energy, carbon reduction, and a wide range of other specialized fields.
As we drive growth, innovation, and excellence across the industry, it's crucial that we empower all talented professionals to contribute. That's where CWEL, the Council on Women in Energy and Environmental Leadership, comes into play.
As a division of AEE, we are focused on supporting mentorship, networking, and scholarships for women.
The technical sessions were amazing.
The conference and expo is a great reflection of where we are at the industry. A lot of the exhibitors and content here is very current and very relevant, so it's a great way to come and get current with the industry.
What sets AEE apart is our commitment to driving change. We are a global family focused on putting people first and making the world better for current and future generations. The clean energy transition is happening now, so join us and be part of a community dedicated to this clean energy future.
Whether you're looking to advance your career, expand your network, or contribute to global climate goals, the Association of Energy Engineers is with you every step of the way. Together, we can shape the future of energy. Join us today. Empower.
We are the Association of Energy Engineers, and our branch is the AEGTA, Greater Toronto Area. It's a hub for energy professionals worldwide, a global organization dedicated to being at the forefront of energy innovation. The AEGTA chapter supports energy professionals by promoting best practices in energy management, supporting professional certificates like CEM, CMVP, CEA, which is what we discussed there earlier in the video, and creating a strong local network of energy and sustainability professionals. We advance decarbonization, energy efficiency, and ESG goals in Ontario and Canada through events like these webinars or in-person ones as well. So we've had some events in June already, which is the Ahead of the Curve, which was part of the Toronto Climate Week. We did it on 3rd of June. We've also had last week the annual Golf Classic, which was well received on 20th of June, and obviously this webinar, which you are attending. We also have some coming up. So in July, we have another webinar with one of our sponsors, Grundfos. Registrations are live on our website for this. On Friday the 17th of July, as part of a collaboration with CWEEL, which you heard about earlier in our video, We're doing an in-person event from 9 to 10, or 9 to 11 at the St. Clair Avenue West Suite in Toronto. So you can register for that on the website when it goes up. So watch our website for that. And we have one more webinar at the end of the month, which is on with another partnership with Carbon Cap, who's one of our sponsors, on condensing boiler performance in multi-residential buildings. So we have a variety of sponsors, and each one of them has a webinar, which is why Aladaco are here to talk about their unlocking energy savings and setting the stage for success. So we have two speakers here, Dan Josling and Stephen Dixon. So Dan Josling is a director in business development at Aladaco Consulting Inc. And Stephen Dixon is the principal of TdS Dixon Inc. So they provide workshops for companies and we'll hear a bit more about them now. So I'll hand it over to Stephen and Dan.
Perfect. Thank you, Aidan. And thank you, everyone, for attending. Sorry?
I said thank you.
Oh, okay. So we're going to do our presentation here on unlocking energy savings, setting the stage for success. So we're going to go over a little bit of the agenda here. So we're going to do some introductions. We're going to look at the Energy Management Challenge, the dollars to cents treasure hunt, examples of projects that have come out of these treasure hunts, and then finally talk about the dollars to cents, incentives, and next steps. So some introductions here first. So Knowenergy was founded in 1987 by Stephen Dixon. As now his son is part of the firm as well. And they offer a practical, hands-on approach to developing energy managers' capacities. Together, they have trained over 45,000 individuals across 1,200 different companies. And if you guys have been in the energy field in Ontario, at some point in time, Stephen and his team have trained you. Their services include red screen expert training, virtual and in-person treasure hunts, foundations of energy management, do-it-yourself energy audits, and the dollars to cents training, which is what we're going to talk about today. So a little bit of us at Aladaco. We were founded 20 years ago. We have 20 years of experience helping organizations identify, evaluate, and implement practical energy services. Our solutions, Our services include DSM program delivery for utilities, energy audits, facility assessments, and opportunity identification, greenhouse gas inventories and decarbonization planning, measurement and verification, third-party energy management support, and practical implementation support to help move projects from ideas to action. So to start off the webinar here today, we're going to talk about what is the problem. The problem is that energy costs are rising, but opportunities are being missed. Most facilities have practical opportunities to save money, but they are being missed or they just lack the time to evaluate the projects and help move them forward. So the real challenge here is that it's not whether there's savings, it's how to quantify them, identify them, and move them into action.
Yeah, and I always say that an idea to save energy is a good thing, but an idea to save energy with dollar value attached to it is an amazing thing, and it has legs.
Couldn't have said that better. So the barrier here is good opportunities get dismissed too early, and I've seen this a lot in my career. Organizations recognize the need to reduce costs and emissions, but they often get stalled for a number of reasons. And a lot of the times, or some of the reasons can be, they're perceived as being too complicated to assess, too expensive to implement, or too small to make a difference. And a real quick story on this is that I worked with a firm one time that was about a 10 megawatt customer. So they were very large. We had identified an opportunity to save them about 150 kilowatts of compressed air. Large project, but for them, 150 kilowatt project was peanuts, and it never moved forward because it just wasn't big enough for them to do. 10 small projects like that would have made a world of difference there. Sometimes there's competing priorities. It's just not justifiable in the eyes of management. And a lot of the times people think that it's going to take too much staff time, data, or resources. So for a lot of organizations that's starting, energy management can just seem overwhelming. And as energy professionals, we use all these terms like, staff buy-in, EMIS, incentives. There's a lot of different functions that make up energy management, and a lot of firms just don't know where to start. So a practical process to help these teams choose where to focus is really needed. So the missing link is a practical project. Saving opportunities need to be more than just good intentions. Teams need to be structured to identify these opportunities, evaluate them, prioritize them, and build the case for implementation. Really, in a Canadian term, they need someone to stick handle these projects. So they need a practical process to turn these energy awarenesses into measurable actions. So from awareness to action. Practical energy management processes, they help teams in 4 key ways. They help people find the opportunities, kind of identify where energy is being used, and look and find opportunities there. Quantify. So it's great to have a good idea, but you need to calculate out what are the potential energy savings, the costs and carbon savings. A way to prioritize these so that they don't seem overwhelming, all these different projects, where to start. And then finally, implementing these projects by developing clear business cases and gaining internal support, which is one of the critical factors here for moving projects forward.
Dan, the story around building business cases and getting support. I remember this one training that we did where the maintenance manager had this wonderful project for warehouse lighting that had a simple payback of 6 months. And the plant manager would not sign off on it, would not do it. And so he gave me the numbers in the training. We put his numbers into a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet generated a cash flow graph, which showed like after 10 years, this LED lighting retrofit would free up, I don't know, something like, $250,000 worth of cash. He put the spreadsheet with the graph at the bottom in front of his plant manager, and he was explaining all the numbers above, and the plant manager became fixated on this graph. He said, "What does this graph mean? Where's this $250,000 come from?" He says, that's the savings that will ensue from that project. And the plant manager looked at the maintenance manager and said, "Why aren't we doing this project?" Because it had not been put in the right light. That financial case had not been analyzed properly. Simply saying 6 months payback is not enough. We need to take it all the way to create a compelling reason for people to do things.
That's a very good point. Most people look at that 6-month payback and think that the financial advantage stops there, and that's just the beginning. So actually, just kind of why does energy management matter? Well, obviously, what we've been talking about here, you have the direct and indirect energy savings, but you also have increased comfort if you're looking at doing this in MERBs or office buildings, right? A lot of times it leads to better productivity, health and safety. Equipment that's getting long in the tooth, by upgrading them to energy efficient units, you do have more reliability. Newer equipment means it's more uptime. And then finally, it does have an environmental impact with reductions on CO2 and energy. So Stephen just mentioned, you have to look beyond the energy savings and bills and look at the big picture. So this is what we're here to talk about today, is the dollars to cents. And what it is it's building the skills to take action. So NRCan has a dollars to cents training programs that offer a wide range of different programs, from financing, sustainability, developing DSM teams and practical ways to identify savings. These are all led through experts in their fields, Stephen being one of them. These people, these trainers, they understand what it takes to move projects from identification to implementation, and they work with the students or the attendees to develop the skills so that they can take it back to their organizations and start driving energy efficiency.
Yeah, so these workshops go back to about 1980, 1999 when we did the first one. So they've been developed over a lot of years. And recently, over the last 10 years, roughly, ISO and Save on Energy program have stepped up to say, hey, listen, we'll support these. So we'll talk about that later. But so the basis is dollars to cents. The program is Save on Energy and their support for dollars to cents. And we've created a special rendition of it called the dollars to cents treasure hunt, which is a combination. Well, we'll talk about what it is, but it's basically training with engagement.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephen. So finally, before I hand it over to Stephen to go through the treasure hunt is, and I think this slide really just kind of hits home to what we're talking about today. It's not what creates the energy savings, it's who creates the energy savings. And my background was in compressed air sales, so I was all about the technology. Well, a study that was done several years ago indicated that in some cases, new technology can actually decrease or increase energy usage, but even energy efficiency technology only drives about 3% of the projects. When you implement people into the mix, that increases up to 16%. But when you combine both people and the technology, the savings potentials goes up to about 23%. So this chart really illustrates that people utilizing technology can really drive savings. And Stephen, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that.
Oh, I got a nice little anecdote for this one. As I was doing a presentation with the Asia Pacific Steel Partnership, so a lot of the major steel companies around the Pacific Rim, and I presented this slide, and I kind of, I've got background in physics. My dad was a metallurgist, and I know there's a lot of energy you can't touch in a steel plant, right? And I kind of soft pedal the slide a little bit. And I said, you're not going to promise steel plants you're going to get to 23%. And I virtually hadn't even finished saying it. And the vice president of one of the Japanese steel companies left from his seat. He said, Steve, this is exactly what we got to do. We can get to 23%, but we'll never get there without engaging with our people. So to me, that made me really bullish about this slide, even though I already believed it and understood it in many contexts. And in a steel plant, doesn't matter, context or scale, it still works. The principle is the same.
So on that note, I'm going to hand it now over to, oh no, I got one more slide, sorry. So before I hand it over to Stephen, when it comes to treasure hunts, there's a whole bunch of different avenues that people have to look for energy opportunity savings and kind of identify systems that should be looked at. Today we're going to talk about the energy hunt, but some of the other popular ones that we see are facility audits, existing building commissioning studies, and process audits. And I'm not going to go through each one on this slide, but when we look at the 4 different streams, the treasure hunt really stands out because it is significant in staff involvement, because the whole purpose of it is to give the staff, the team at the organization, the tools that they need to start developing or identifying and developing projects and starting to build that culture of energy efficiency. So yes, on a staff involvement, the treasure hunts are very high. When you look at energy or facility audits, it's fairly low. A lot of the times there's a kickoff meeting, consultants go off and do their report or do their audit. They come back with a report. EBCX as well, can be significant if there's a lot of BIS data that they have to go through. And then finally there's a process audit. And I kind of see these as kind of a progression. In a perfect world, the firm would start with an energy audit, and then they would move through to the systems audit. What we don't like to see is people doing audits for the sake of doing audits. And that's kind of one of the things that we see a lot in the industry is facility or organizations go out and they'll do an audit or they'll do a really detailed engineering study that just sits on a shelf. The whole goal of our treasure hunts and dollars to cents training is to lay that foundation so that when people or businesses realize they need to do audits, they're doing it for the right reasons. They're doing it to eventually move that audit into an actual project.
Yeah, it's interesting, Dan, and we've often seen these treasure hunts be actually the catalyst for many of the other things. Certainly EBCX, you'll often find a lot of operational opportunities, which can be then confirmed and realized through a good EBCX, but even an audit for that matter. So to me, if you don't know where to start, I think one of the best places to start is with a treasure hunt. This is something we've done for many, many years. I actually didn't call them a treasure hunt back in the day in 1991. but we brought together senior people from organizations, operational, technical people, and we took them through a 2-day process where we basically taught them about energy and then helped them to realize where their opportunities existed. So that's really what this is all about. It's about becoming more familiar with energy and engaging people in the process. So the advantages of a treasure hunt are, as articulated on the next slide, basically the involvement of staff keeps people engaged, right? I mean, if you identify an opportunity as part of a treasure hunt, if you're a participant, you're going to own that opportunity, right? Many of the opportunities we run into have pretty quick paybacks, right? The training aspect or building capacity means that they can go and do this afterwards, right? So, and at the end of the day, I wanted to thousands of buildings, and honestly, if you realize and recognize the value of the staff and what they know about their buildings, it's amazing what can happen. To me, that's it. I'm an energy guy. I've done it for 40 whatever years, but I don't know that building like the person in the building. And if I ignore that person, it's at my risk, right? So at the end of the day, you've got to involve people. So the process that we use is articulated in a 6-step process. And I'm going to talk about a 7 steps workshop in the middle of this, but the first step is to prepare, right? And we spend a lot of time preparing by gathering data and customizing workshops. So we want to have as much information about the facility, whether it's a plant or whether it's a building, as we can. We're going to build all that into our training. So it's not just theoretical training now. The 7 steps workshop is a completely customized workshop using the information from that building. So as we go through the different aspects of the training, capacity building, it could be over half a day, it could be over a day. We've done these things over 3 days, or we've done them over half a day, actually the whole thing, right? So we can configure them in different ways. But at the end of the day, we want to have whatever training we do steeped in the information about that building, right? That prepares us to do this exploration of the building that we actually call the treasure hunt. We walk through the building, we look at the automation systems, we discuss what staff know about the building, rather than waiting until the end of doing an audit and then getting staff's input to it, which I've seen, and it doesn't work very well, right? We do it, it's in line, it's part of what we do. So we look for those opportunities. We identify those opportunities. We put them on a flip chart, literally on a flip chart. We put them in a spreadsheet we call our treasure chest. And then we quantify the opportunity. We might prioritize them a little bit, depending on the time we have available, whether it's a half a day or 2 days. We may pick, 5, 10, or 15 of these ideas and quantify those. But basically, and not just to the energy, the cost, the carbon, and as required, take it all the way to the financial analysis. Now it's going to require costing, right? That's going to require costing. So sometimes that becomes an extension, but that is an incredibly important step, as I said before, because if you can't show that, that cash flow from the project down the road, you might not get the yes from that 6-month simple payback. The opportunity list, right? It gets sorted and we present those results, right? So what we want to do is take those results back. We'll often invite someone who doesn't attend the workshop, some maybe in management or other parts of the organization, to come in and see what was created. And the idea here is to give credit to the participants, who are essentially the staff and the employees of this organization, because that's where the ideas came from. So just going a little further, I'm going to move through these slides pretty quickly, Dan, in preparation. We'll look at each of these steps, but the most important thing is having access to a lot of information about the building, the facility. We've actually done this even in situations where we weren't able to reveal during the workshop, sensitive or proprietary production information, but we can build around that. So that's where you bring other people into the workshop. I mean, Alan over at Toyota, you've done treasure hunts, you run a lot of these things. There are little kaizens that you do, and sometimes you bring in other people. So you kind of have sometimes, make sure that the other folks may not, have access to all the information, but you can get around that. You can treat the information in a way that still allows people to engage in the process. And typically we're looking to build either a half-day or a one-day workshop. I like the one-day full approach with a half-day workshop, because a lot of people are busy today, right? And if we can't have impact in a day, right, with a half day of training, maybe we shouldn't be doing this, right? So, and oftentimes that leads to other things. So moving on from the preparation, what does the workshop look like? What is this training? Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add here, I think one of the things that kind of make our dollars to cents different is the fact that we do that prep work ahead of time. It's not just a simple cookie cutter, one size fits all. And it really gives the trainers who are doing this the real opportunity to see what does that building look like, so that when they get into that treasure
Oh, yeah.
hunt, they're ready. They already have some kind of ideas of where it's going from, or where they need to look.
And our job is really not so much to present the opportunities, but lead people to realizing the opportunities themselves, right? Because then the capacity will likely exist beyond that to recognize them again and again. That's the whole art of it. Not feeding a person to fish, but teaching the person how to fish. That's really what we want to do here. So what does the actual formal training look like? Again, we can do this over an hour and a half. We can do this over 3 hours. We can do this over a day. But basically, it's to me, it's an audit framework in many ways. After doing hundreds of, if not thousands of energy audits, these are the 7 steps that I look at. It's the 7 critical things you can ask about a facility. You know, how much are we using in energy? What's the price, and what does it cost? And that price is important, because at the end of the day, we're going to quantify these opportunities. We have to understand the price properly. What are all the different aspects of price with electricity, natural gas? You know, it's not just a simply one price fits all. So we need to analyze those bills properly. That's what we do here, and really understand, you know, what is the distribution of energy between the different commodities that you're buying. And then we do benchmarking, right? And you can compare a building to other buildings. You can compare a plant to other plants, but actually in industrial situations, many plants, it's hard to find a comparable. Maybe you've got, you know, within your organization, maybe you have 3 or 4 plants that are similar to yours, but even those can be uniquely different. What we like to do is compare a building to itself over time, right? And we use techniques of regression and QSUM to do that, what's otherwise known as performance analysis. And that allows us to really tell a story of how a building arrived at today. And it's amazing when you put it by graph. I use a QSUM graph, which tells the story of a building's performance. You put it up there and you identify 3 or 4 dates when things have changed for a good way. They've made improvements, and the folks in the room can actually identify what those events are, and they can take ownership of those events. So you're telling a story and you're patting people on the back, and you're really, you know, developing that understanding of how that facility uses energy. We want to understand when it uses it. So
Stephen, I just wanted to add here too. I think one of the real advantages of Aladaco partnering up with Stephen at Knowenergy is, combined, there's over 250 years of energy management experience. So, you know, if we're going in and doing a workshop with someone in a heavy industrial or heavy manufacturing, we've got a resource that's what they've spent the last 40 years for. If it's, you know, office building. So on our side too, is we can bring in the staff that can really complement the training to support the 7 steps.
Well, the point is that the people at the front of the room, namely myself many times, aren't the experts in the room. We're not the only experts. We may be expert in energy, but we're not expert at those processes, equipment, those systems. And that's where, exactly, Dan, your folks, right, when we work together, you know, I'm not an expert at what you do, Dan, or other people. So I can work with those folks, and we can bring them all into play. So it really is truly a team effort in that sense. Understanding when your building uses energy, the profiles, the demand profiles, the gas profiles, very important. Understanding where the energy goes, building that inventory. Now, that's a little bit tricky when you only have a day, but there's a lot you can do. There's some tricks that we've used in the past where we can take the bills, we can take our regression analysis, and we can start to break down the consumption in that facility. And it actually becomes very illuminating in that search for opportunities, which is get rid of waste, energy you don't need to use, improve the efficiency value while you convert the purchase form to the end use form, and optimizing the supply, which includes things like heat pumps, heat recovery, renewable, things like that. And that's a prioritization too. Now in our hunts, we typically focus more on waste and efficiency, but that's not to say we won't touch on the bigger things, right? So the actual hunt itself, when we go through the facility, you know, we're looking at, you know, the equipment and major using systems, and it's not just a matter of looking for opportunities. It's a matter of explaining to people. It's part of the training too. We've often had, you know, the CEO of a municipality who became really incredibly engaged in pushing projects forward because he started to understand what this is all about. When we went through the mechanical rooms, right? I remember in another commercial real estate situation where the general manager and the building operator were going up the mechanical penthouse, and the operator said, we got to do these things more often. This is really interesting. And the general manager said, we're going to do these things more often because now I know exactly where the opportunities lie. So it's building the relationship between staff too, right? As well as looking at automation, taking, you know, the staff observation and the issues that they know every day and bringing into the forefront. So basically it's just this having this engaging conversation, and out of it comes those opportunities. Moving on, then we have to quantify those opportunities, right? We will prioritize them first. I love this list here. This is all I give people a checklist. I don't give them a checklist of all the systems in the building. I say, can we shut it off? Can we tune it up? Can we make it routine? And does it need to be replaced, right? So at the end of the day, this sheet comes back filled in more times than anything else I've used, right? Because it doesn't constrain people. It kind of allows, it opens up what the opportunities might be, right? And then we have to start to put savings numbers to it. And this is something that has to happen pretty quickly, right? So when we do this, we'll use spreadsheets. You know, I know the folks at Aladaco have tons of different spreadsheets they've used. We both use Red Screen Expert. Online calculators, depending on the situation. I will use all of the resources that are available to us, because at the end of the day, if we put an idea on that list and we don't put a number against it, it's not going to be as valuable. So we've got to get these numbers down. People have to see this process. And it takes a bit of facilitation, like someone's over there in the corner working madly on a computer, the other person's facilitating the flow of information. No, they're not working on their email, they're actually calculating numbers, but it becomes a very engaging process. And people compete with one another, they're coming up with better ideas too, so we can kind of make it competitive too. So, and moving on from there, then we'll want to prioritize and assemble that list, right? And there's various different ways to do this, but here's an interesting one, right? Where you want to, you know, I always say you have to have 3 buckets for ideas, things we're going to do tomorrow, things that we won't do, and things that we need to think about. Well, this gives you 4 different buckets to put things in. One way or the other, you got to pick the things you're going to do sooner than later. And I think that's the key thing, is getting to action sooner than later. And presenting the results can take many different forms. We've done this. We've created infographics in the workshop. That's actually an actual flip chart from a workshop. We'll have a treasure hunt spreadsheet that we use to quantify things, summarize things in a nice way. And there's the example of what can come out of it. One facility, 34% cost reduction and 58% save, or $58,000 a year in savings. I mean, and most of those things end up getting implemented. That's the key here, is that the implementation rate, I think, is very high on these types of things. Moving on from there, Dan, and I'm going to ask the question, and you can speak to this one too. Where do we find the savings, right? Where do we find? Everywhere. I'm going to answer the question myself. Everywhere, right? But anybody that's done existing building commissioning will realize that many times one of the greatest opportunities is the scheduling of things, turning things off, making things run, or making sure things run when they need to. So that's definitely on the list. Speed control of fans and pumps, resetting temperatures, and we do get into some stuff. Depending on the skill of the people in the room, we'll get into some pretty good stuff when it comes to the automation systems, right? Space temperature control. Big one in commercial buildings is economizer, making sure they're set up and working properly and not lying about the amount of outside air, and even to the point about tenant measures too, right? So we'll often engage, depending on the situation, with tenants that may exist in the building, not so much in industrial, but certainly in commercial and institutional buildings, right? So give you some examples. In one workshop that we did in a municipal environment, this is an interesting one. We had 2 buildings that were virtually the same. Building operators had just been assigned to these buildings, so they had no history in the buildings. They had no baggage in a sense. And we gave them the profiles, the purple line and the blue line for the 2 buildings. At break, after we gave them those graphs and they started to look at them and talk about them, the 2 operators realized that in one of the buildings, the automation systems had been heavily overridden in the past and just left that way, right? So we went through this and really, you know, quantified what the opportunity would be to getting the schedules right. It was at least $20,000 a year in savings. And that came out of 2 operators that are talking for about 15 minutes and maybe another 15 minutes of work afterwards to try to identify the systems. I mean, that's very similar to what we did in a plastics plant in Eastern Canada. It was interesting because we had the kickoff meeting at the beginning of the day in the meeting room, and there was people all around. And they were, you know, everybody was sort of talking. There was people from housekeeping there. There was plant management. There was the continuous improvement people, production people, maintenance, and so on. And we were talking about what we were trying to do is figure out why the electricity consumption overnight was so high. I kind of knew why. I mean, it's things being left on. So anyway, after a fair bit of little discussion, it was interesting because the housekeeping person very gingerly put her hand up. She said, I think I might know the answer to this question. I said, go ahead. She said, well, when we walk through the plant in the off hours, she said, we're cleaning things up. I walk by so much equipment that's left turned on. And she said, but I don't know, is it idling or what? And I certainly don't have permission to turn it off. She said, but if you gave me a list and things that I could turn off, I could do that. It turned out that when we did the numbers on the equipment, we walked around the plant with her, we identified the things, put the numbers to it, $48,000 a year in savings. I mean, that's as simple as somebody having permission to turn something off. That person who, to begin with, I think didn't know why she was involved in this treasure hunt became kind of the rock star of the whole thing.
Well, I think
maybe as we walk through, we go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that's one of the benefits of the treasure hunt, because I know during my time working for an LDC, I spent a lot of time out with customers, and a lot of the times I'd be dealing with someone that was in engineering or the maintenance people, and we would come up with this great list of ideas, but it wouldn't go past that. One of the real benefits of these workshops is because you get people from all different parts of the company, or even back to the BAS one above, is a lot of the times we'll bring together people from different facilities within that organization, and it really gives a good opportunity for people to share different ideas and compare stuff, which you normally don't get because people are just tunnel visioned on their facility or their job.
Yeah, I remember the other one where we were walking through, and one of the operators from another facility looked at the two pumps that were running, heating water pumps, and said, "Oh, look, there's variable frequency drives in those pumps." And they said, "Yeah, there is." But I said, another operator looks, he goes, "Why are the pumps running in parallel? Why do they need to be on together? That's a backup." Anyway, we did the math. Turns out that one of the pumps had been put on a deep override as part of a commissioning process 4 years earlier, and set to 20% and forgotten. And that was $3,000 a year just by removing that override. So yeah, I mean, and people are more willing to ask questions about things that aren't necessarily things they do. We have to be very careful that we don't, put people on the spot. But I think that can happen. And most people, I've never had problems with that. As long as you tell people up front, we're doing this for the better good of everybody, they'll participate. So I think the numbers on this one are one of your ones there, Dan. But I remember, this reminds me of one situation I walked through a plant, and one of the staff from the office, we were going through a cooled space, and there was a hot steam pipe running through a cooled space, and the person said, "Doesn't that pipe need insulation?" And the answer was very clearly yes, but nobody'd seen it before. It was like I think it was, well, this says 100 feet. I think in that case it was like 200 feet of pipe. So yeah, absolutely. It's amazing how many times we walk by things. So sometimes when you become familiar with things, you walk by stuff every day, right? So by putting critical eyes on, bringing critical eyes in, I know Alan over at Toyota understands this one. Having critical eyes, we'll find opportunity.
That's one of the things that I know drives my wife nuts. We'll go to a restaurant or we'll go anywhere, and the first thing I do, and it's instinctive, is I start looking up. No one ever looks up, and I'm like finding savings when I'm at a restaurant, right? But it's just people get stuck in their tunnel vision of their everyday, and they don't see what's all around them.
Well, you talked about my son worked with me, right? So when him and his sister were born back in the day, and that's like close to 40 years ago now, then we used to go through the supermarkets, and they could identify a low pressure sodium, a high pressure sodium, and halide fluorescent lamp, because they were in their strollers looking up, right? So I taught them what they were looking at. Anyway, yeah, it's always good to have that knowledge. So I got one more for you, Dan, and I think you got some more after this one.
Yes, I do.
This is an interesting one. This is a variable speed drive, a glycol pump that was part of a very, very large commercial building, a large loop that either provided heat to a heat pump or allowed heat pumps to discharge heat into the loop itself. So it was kind of an incremental loop heat pump system. And they had a variable speed drive on this particular loop, right? And there were times when they were running it at 80%, but the bottom line was there was times when they weren't, right? The pump ran all the time, and it could be reduced in speed. They've already done it, and basically they just needed to do a simple test to verify that it would actually operate properly. So simply adjusting the drive, $55,000 cost reduction, right? To me, this is what this stuff's all about. Now, is it stop there? No, but the point is, once you get to that point, then you realize there's probably more and more things to look for. And that one actually had a peak demand impact because turning the pump down during the day when it was required even less in the night than it was during the 5 top peak. So there was definitely opportunity on the peaks for that one too. So Dan, you've got a bunch of ones here around compressed air and other non-productive energy, right?
I'm just going to share one little story similar to this, Stephen. Is I was working in a tomato processing plant. The gentleman was near retirement, had been there for 40 years, great guy, and they had a 10 horsepower blower that would blow air on the cans to dry them off before they went to be labeled. And every time I was there, I saw the ball valve half choked on this blower. So finally I said to him, like, would this be a great opportunity for a VFD, right? You're choking the air off. He looks at me and goes, no, cranked it back to full and walked away. So sometimes you can spot stuff and you can't win. So we've got some here on compressed air, and this is a topic that I can go on for hours about, but here's an example where the machines weren't properly controlled. They had variable speed drive compressors, but they didn't have air receivers built into it or adequate air receivers, and they weren't sequenced correctly. So a simple project of installing air receivers was a 1 to 2 year payback with over $8,000 in savings. Again, this is something that I know compressed air is always talked about, but there's so many opportunities when you do these treasure hunts of just looking for leaks in pipes, air hoses that have cuts in it. When I first started in the air compressor industry, we went to a customer that was complaining that he needed a new compressor because he was running out of air. It was Jeff Scott at the time, and I walked in, and you could hear air just hissing. In the middle of the floor was an air hose with duct tape wrapped around it. All they had to do was replace an air hose. So it's spotting those little things that can save huge amount of money and time. And the last one we're going to look at here again is another opportunity. They had a large air compressor that was running 24/7, but at night they only needed instrument air. So the machine was basically hanging out. Both of them were running, hanging out, doing little work. By simply installing a very inexpensive 5 horsepower air compressor, they were able to save about $12,000 a year. But to tie this back to what
they've done a wonderful job of getting rid of leaks, right? The trouble is the air compressor, the 240 horses, could not turn down properly against no air demand. So sorry, Dan.
No, and I was just gonna say this ties back to what we mentioned earlier about the non-energy savings. A rotary screw air compressor can be up to $2,000 to $3,000 a year in maintenance. The oil's expensive, the separators are expensive, whereas a small rotary or small reciprocating compressor, you can do service on them twice a year for about $300 in parts. So you can also look at the energy saving or the maintenance savings on this would almost be, again, another third on top of what those savings are right there. And then finally, I'm going to let you take this one, Steve.
Yeah, I think this is basically similar to the one I talked about in the plastics plant. This was actually in a food processing operation. But again, we looked at the profiles. We identified that there was an estimated 75 kilowatts were available. So part of it is, quantifying waste. Everybody talks about it, but how do you quantify it? Well, that's where I think demand profiles can come in really, really handy, especially if you've got good resolution on them. Even without sub-metering, a lot of times people say, I don't have any sub-metering, but that's fine. We can work with a demand profile. We're able to identify a bunch of equipment. And again, the housekeeping manager, this is a different plant now, this is a food plant. The housekeeping manager's walk-around list was updated to include these things that can be turned off. Things that were idling didn't need to be on $18,000 a year. So, I mean, payback, well, how long does it take to turn something off, right? How much does it cost? So very, very quick. But again, it's implementation by implementing or building into schedules or building into routine things. And to me, that's one of the other challenges of energy management is making it routine. Not something that has happened as an exception, but can we make it routine, something that can happen all the time? And that's what we're doing in this situation. Actually, the next one, Dan, too, is kind of interesting. This was actually an industrial, we call it an industrial facility. It's actually a wastewater treatment plant. And they had already done a lot of good stuff. They were operating, benchmark wise, when we did the benchmarking, they came in very, very good. So they were actually a very efficient plant to begin with. They had a lot of stuff that they done, and they wanted to do an energy hunt to find more opportunities. So we found 9 operational measures that would contribute 8% of cost and 6% to carbon reduction. And they, what's interesting is that we did this about 2 years ago, and I had a conversation with a gentleman just last week, and he said, yeah, we're implementing the final ones there. We're doing those, and now we're moving on to actually becoming ISO 5001, because we realized that in order to sustain all the things that we've done, we need to have some procedure at an organizational level. So they're doing an energy management system. But a lot of, there you go. An impetus for doing it becomes a treasure hunt, but at the end of the day, you're implementing it at a pretty high organizational level. To me, that's the goal here, is that it becomes sustainable and maybe persistent is a better word, persistent. Go ahead, Dan.
All right. So in summary, the treasure hunts include the preparation work. One of the biggest steps on it is selecting the attendees, and we've talked about that, but having the right people in the room is critical for these workshops and energy management in general. And then as prep work, the teams, collect the data, look at the utility data to kind of see, okay, where are there potential opportunities before we even start the treasure hunt, or the treasure hunt day, which starts off with the half day in class with the 7 steps of energy management, followed up by a half day in the or in the facility, doing a facility walkthrough, identifying opportunities. And what I like about this is that we go out with the attendees, and if they do spot stuff, we can on the spot kind of give them an idea, is this a good project, if this is not, or if we see stuff that they're not seeing, kind of put them in the right direction. But at the end of the day, the big thing is that we want these to be savings or opportunities that they've identified, so that it establishes that ownership right off the bat. And then finally, we develop that opportunity list and quantify the savings. And then to close out the day, we develop an action plan for them. And then finally, everybody loves it. Everybody gets a certificate. And I'm sure Stephen has handed out thousands of these.
Oh yeah, I know. And it's funny, I've had feedback from people, hey, I used that certificate and I got a promotion at the job I was at. I was amazed. It was like, okay, that's great, amazing. Somebody mentioned in the chat, Zoran, you said Red Screen free. No, Red Screen's not free. It does cost. If you use it consistently, it's worth a subscription, which I think is like $870 a year. But one thing I will say is that if you download it, it is free to try. You can't save with it, but you can do a lot of calculations with it. So in that sense, there's some free calculators in there. But once you see it, you'll either use it or maybe you won't. So, see what you think about it. Happy to, if you, somewhere on my email address will be on here, right, Dan? And if you want some more information about Red Screen, I can certainly provide that. So.
Perfect. So now we're going to talk about a little bit about
Alan.
Sorry.
Alan said about developing credibility, and NPE culture can definitely be applied to all utilities. So thanks, Alan. Absolutely. You probably got more experience with me with these things actually at the end of the day.
So we're just going to close out the presentation here by talking a little bit about the dollars and cents workshops. So as we spoke about earlier, Aladaco is partnering up with Stephen and his team to offer the dollar to cents workshops, the treasure hunts. Now there is some incentive programming out there through the Save on Energy program. Participants may be eligible for up to $500 a day for Enbridge customers, or 75% of the costs. And then non-Enbridge customers is $300 a day. And this does cover a good portion of the workshops. But we always recommend, as when you're looking at doing these workshops, let's see if you qualify for them first, because there's nothing worse than doing the workshop and then finding out that the facility wasn't qualified or didn't qualify for the incentives. But
most will qualify. I think the key thing is that the people attending have to be employees of the facility. and the company that owns that facility. So that's a key thing. And to get the 75%, you have to have a significant number of people in the room, not 2 or 3, although we could run it at that, but obviously it would be less advantageous from an incentive perspective. But at the end of the day, what a lot of people have said to me is that even without the incentive, not that we're going to take it away, but even without the incentive, the savings generally more than pay for the workshop that was done. So
it really is an investment. The workshop definitely pays for itself. So the next steps here. So organizations that are interested can reach out to us for a quick conversation on what's involved, gain interest on the program. We can look at, okay, is this a 1-2 day program or a half a day program? 1 day kind of seems to be the sweet spot to make sure that everything can get covered. We will review the incentive eligibility with you before you move forward with it. And you can coordinate the steps through us, and then we'll work with Stephen and his team, and together we'll jointly do a presentation or do a workshop for organizations. So I've got my stuff on there.
The 1 day versus half day and the 2 half days, staffing could be an issue. You put a number of people in a room, they're not on their regular job. So we sometimes will divide the groups up that way in order to give more people exposure, but not remove your staffing in significant quantity. So yeah, we're flexible. We'll make it work for you.
Perfect. And then, so yeah, that's our presentation on the dollars to cents training here. We could open the floor up to questions now.
Somebody said, please share the calculator. So I can share that link to, oh, no, I can't. I don't know why. So somebody can type in www.rutscreen.net. Then that's where you go and get RutScreen as a calculator. If there are specific calculators you might like, send me an email. I've got just a ton of stuff that I can share with you. There's also another one, the Energy Savings Toolkit from NRCan, which we developed actually in conjunction with these workshops. So we can provide a link to that as well. I don't know why I can't type into the chat, but hopefully, there we go. That's the RutScreen one. And then there's Energy Savings Toolkit. Why can't I type here?
Okay. So we have a question here. We had a question here on the people and technology. I know that report was from the 90s. It's quite a bit old. I'll see if we can find that slide for you. And
I have a copy of it. I have a manual copy that was scanned. It's no longer in publication, and I can send that along. So Dan, just send me an email, and I can definitely provide that for sure.
What I like about that
guide that it's drawn from.
What I like about that chart is it's 30 years old, and it's still relevant today as it was 30 years ago. So
yeah, they say about technology, they didn't change the charge on an electron in hundreds of years, and human behavior hasn't changed either.
No, not at all. And then we have another question here about the dollars to cents programs still active. Yes, they are.
It is. Well, the NRCan is not actively involved in them per se. So they developed them back in '97. About 2016, they put it out for public tender. And so the CIET, Canadian Institute for Energy Training, and ourselves, TdS Dixon, applied and received the license to deliver it, although I had been delivering it since about '97 myself. And then that license was renewed. So I have license to deliver these workshops. And we pay a royalty back to NRCan for them. They've maintained them over the years, so that's a reasonable thing. So they continue to promote them. But here in Ontario, Save on Energy a number of years ago picked up on it and decided to support it. And I think there's been a lot of good things come from that. So that's the way it works.
All right. Now, Alan has a question here. Do you have a suggestion? Managerial approval to conduct energy hunts post energy hunt event commitment is weak as participants are very heavily loaded with day-to-day operations and conflicting priorities. This is definitely something we see all the time. The whole goal is to try to get everybody involved in it so that the burden is not just on one person. I don't know, Stephen, if you've got any suggestions for that.
Yeah, well, this is something we're actually working on right now, is sort of a continued support. I think part of it is that teaching the people to fish doesn't end at identifying and quantifying the opportunities. It has to go all the way through to implementing them. So, I mean, yeah, I think one of the things it comes down to is whether management see the benefit, right? I mean, they may understand the benefit of the hunt itself and maybe the engagement piece and are willing to do that. But then who's there to pick up on, what's identified and actually implement that? So I think part of that, I think, is going to come down to, again, a stronger case for the measures that come out of the hunt. That's why, to me, a list of measures is one thing, but putting numbers to those things and, in fact, building them into a proper financial analysis with an NPV and IRR, a savings to investment ratio, I think that helps a lot because that really demonstrates the value. And
I'm just going to add on to that.
Yeah.
Stephen, I'm just going to add on to that really quickly. One of the things that we do through our line of business is third-party energy managers. So we have some clients where they couldn't either find a qualified energy manager for the role, or they didn't have enough of a need to justify a full body. The advantage that we find for that is that they're there to just be dedicated to energy management. And a lot of the times when you have someone in-house doing that role, just as you mentioned, Alan, they get busy with day-to-day stuff or they get put onto side projects, and that energy management gets put on the back burner. So it's something that every organization faces.
Just to cut in here, sorry, just in respect of time, I think any other questions, which has been great Q&A, please dedicate or direct them to Dan and Stephen through their emails. And if you wouldn't mind, I'll just share my screen as well. So
yeah, so now I guess you're from ISO, Save on Energy. Please send me an email. We can talk about that. I can direct you to the folks that we work with, but also talk about it. I think that it's important too that part of the implementation then will likely attract incentives. So being able to make sure those incentives are or presented properly within the context of the treasure hunt would be great. So let's have a conversation about that.
Yeah.
Please send me an email.
Perfect. So if you'd like to join the AE GTA, we've got 2 different membership tiers, and I'll just pause here for a second for anyone to scan the QR code and register that way. While they're doing that,
Aidan, I'm going to ask the question the participants normally ask. Aidan, are you going to send your slides out afterwards?
Yes.
Or is there a recording going to be available? Okay, good. Yeah.
We're going to send the slides out afterwards, but also the recording will get uploaded to our YouTube as well. So thank you for that. We'll also send out certificates as well for the attendance, which should come in the next week. So I just want to end it there and say thank you very much. A heartfelt thank you to our presenting speakers and for your participants as well for taking time out of your busy day and over lunch to join today's session. We hope you found it insightful and hope it answered some of the questions that you came in with. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to us or the speakers themselves directly, and we'd love to hear from you. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for attending and have a good rest of your day. Thank you all.
Thanks for all the thumbs up, the claps, the emojis, and others.
Have a good day. Thank you again.
Thank you, Aidan. Thanks, Daniel. Take care.